As we diversify into some broader business topics this year, I want to take a look at a federal judge who's blocked the announced acquisition between JetBlue and Spirit Airlines. The airline industry is very competitive with four dominant players: Delta, American, United, and Southwest, and this acquisition looked to make the fifth biggest player by combining these two businesses. Now, the courts are saying a consolidation here could hurt cost conscious travelers, since that is the target demographic for JetBlue and Spirit. But this could have some other repercussions as we think about other potential acquisitions in 2024, and also the other looming acquisition or merger in the airline space, thinking about Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines contemplating a merger. And so, what does this mean for the bigger picture? And what does it mean for investors and for those who are just generally concerned about what's happening in the business space? Let's take a deeper dive into it. But if we haven't met before, my name's Frank Cho. I'm here to help you live a richer life. On this channel, we talk about cryptocurrency, personal finance, and investing. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, do it now. That way I can keep you informed of all the latest news and updates. All right, as always, let me know in the comments what you think about some of the newer topics we're exploring as we try and expand the topics covered here on the channel. So, a federal judge this last Tuesday blocked JetBlue's $3.8 billion deal to buy Spirit Airlines, rejecting a merger that he said would hamper competition and lead to higher fees. So this thwarts what would have been the biggest airline merger in over a decade and marks a victory for the Department of Justice, which sued last year to prevent JetBlue and Spirit from going ahead with this tie-up. Combining Spirit and JetBlue was always going to be a little bit of a culture clash. JetBlue has its seatback screens, free Wi-Fi, and snacks, and said it would rip rows out of Spirit's notoriously cramped planes to match its own roomier configuration. But U.S. District Judge William Young of the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts said customers would lose out on more than Spirit's bright yellow planes if the deal was allowed to go through. He agreed with the DOJ, which had argued that the acquisition would move an ultra low cost carrier, that being Spirit, that puts pressure on other airlines to keep down their fares. The elimination of Spirit would harm cost conscious travelers who rely on Spirit's low fares, he wrote. The airlines haven't said whether they'll file an appeal. JetBlue and Spirit said in a joint statement they disagreed with the court's ruling and were evaluating next steps. They said the merger was still the best opportunity to increase competition, keep fares low, and compete with bigger carriers. Now, if you think about what's happening in the airline space, in order to really compete with the big players, you need to find some ways to leverage your fixed costs, keeping in mind that this is an industry facing some challenges. You have pilots that are retiring as they age out of the system, and pilots not coming in. If you watch some of the recent football games here in the US over the past weekend, United is even advertising in these big games with expensive ad rates to try and get pilots in to their education system. Because the requirements are so steep, you need so many flight hours, you've got to have a pipeline of new pilots, and airlines across the board are struggling. And so here too, you see these airlines considering a merger where they can try and get some sort of leverage on their pool of candidates, on the fixed costs they incur from running the different fixed components of their business, meaning things like your fixed overhead, your finance teams, your HR, all these things that you can sort of merge together when you have that larger entity, and it doesn't require that incremental spend when it comes to maintenance contracts and things like that. All these things where you can get some kind of economy of scale. Now, the DOJ under President Biden's definitely taken a tougher stance against consolidation. Airlines have been a particular flashpoint here, as these government officials have grown more concerned that a series of mergers in the past 2 decades has led to diminished competition. The decision could have repercussions for other airlines hoping to merge. As I mentioned earlier, Alaska announced plans just in December to buy Hawaiian Airlines in just a $1 billion deal. Alaska said that Tuesday's ruling wouldn't affect their plans. JetBlue battled for months to win Spirit from another rival, striking their deal back in 2022 to create, as I said, what would become the fifth largest airlines. JetBlue and its attorneys had argued the deal was necessary to create a viable challenger capable of taking on those four big boys in the space that we mentioned earlier: Alaska, Delta, United, and Southwest. But those arguments didn't sway the antitrust enforcers at the DOJ and didn't move the court either. So you see the courts are definitely having a big impact here, especially as they've ruled against these businesses trying to find some of these economies of scale. The airline industry is an oligopoly that has become more concentrated due to a series of mergers in the first decades of the 21st century, with a small group of firms in control of the vast majority of the market, Young wrote. Now both airlines face an uncertain path. Spirit and other budget carriers haven't had the same post-pandemic resurgence as some larger rivals. Between delayed plane deliveries and, as mentioned, the industry-wide shortage of pilots have constrained their growth, and competition has only intensified as larger carriers facing declining corporate travel due to remote or hybrid work have piled into domestic routes and chased leisure travelers. Spirit has struggled financially. It hasn't turned a profit since before COVID-19 and has been further hobbled by an engine recall that's going to require it to ground a significant chunk of its fleet this year. The discounter has stopped onboarding new pilots and flight attendants and even offered voluntary buyouts to some of their corporate employees. Spirit's shares had tumbled since the merger was announced in 2022, trading at less than half of what JetBlue was going to pay. Its shares fell 47% to $7.92 back on Tuesday, right after this ruling was released. Now, Spirit may have a few options remaining, according to some analysts. We believe the best case scenario for Spirit is a Chapter 11 filing followed by a liquidation, said analysts at TD Cowen, which is really sad. You hate to see, whatever your feelings are, you hate to see a business like this go under. Spirit may not have created the best travel experience, but it certainly gave you a low-cost option. I flew to Colombia for a vacation on Spirit for a very cheap price compared to other airlines with comparable routes, and it certainly is sad to see something like this happen, where maybe that Chapter 11 is the route that they have to go, because they did provide some of those options, not just here domestically, but some of those international flights to South and Central America. Now, JetBlue shares have actually risen up 5% on Tuesday. JetBlue also has been losing money, and some analysts and investors started to grow skeptical about buying Spirit at such a steep price tag and that it wouldn't benefit JetBlue. This represents a big disappointment for JetBlue CEO Robin Hayes, who said last week he's going to step down in February. He fought to get Spirit from Frontier, another discount airline that struck a deal to buy it before JetBlue swooped in, and he previously tried to buy Virgin America but lost that deal to Alaska Air in 2016 after a heated bidding war. JetBlue had agreed to pay Spirit shareholders a breakup fee of $400 million if the deal was barred by antitrust authorities, in addition to another $70 million to the company itself. JetBlue's made some payments to shareholders that do count towards that fee, but think about that. These are massive dollar amounts that could end up becoming liabilities for JetBlue in the future. What might that do to their stock price going forward? And what will that do to, their ability to compete? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, Attorney General Merrick Garland called the ruling a win for travelers. The ruling's the second time the DOJ prevailed over airlines in court recently. Last year, a federal judge ordered American and JetBlue to unwind a partnership he said would suppress competition in key Northeast markets, and American Airlines is still appealing that decision. To allay concerns about competition lost in cities where JetBlue and Spirit overlap, JetBlue had previously pledged to divest gates and airport slots in Boston, New York, and Fort Lauderdale to Allegiant and Frontier. An expert for JetBlue and Spirit said that it was highly probable other discount airlines would fill the vacuum left by Spirit's absence. JetBlue said the deal was unlike so many that came before it and would create a disruptor nationwide that would allow it to expand beyond its base in the Northeast and undercut legacy carriers on price and eventually offered better quality. And Young said that might indeed have been the case, but losing Spirit was too much, he added. Again, that's the judge in the case. Spirit's unique position in the domestic scheduled passenger airline industry would be exceedingly difficult for another airline or combination of airlines to replicate, he wrote. JetBlue, if you're unfamiliar, was founded back in 1998, began flying in 2000 as a low cost carrier that would offer better customer service and amenities than the legacy carriers. The Department of Justice previously described JetBlue as a maverick that brings fares down as it enters new markets. Spirit is even better for consumers, the government argued. When Spirit starts offering flights in a new area, even one that JetBlue already serves, prices decrease by an average of 20%, according to the government. Young wrote, Spirit is a small airline, but there are those who love it. To those dedicated customers of Spirit, this one's for you, he wrote. Now, is it really for those customers? If the company ends up going through a bankruptcy and a liquidation, those customers are going to end up losing out anyway. So was this the right outcome here from the courts? And was the DOJ really merited in bringing this case in the beginning? We see that the DOJ likes to step in when they see businesses doing things that they perceive to violate antitrust rules, regulations, laws. But in instances like this, where you have a highly competitive industry and it's difficult for smaller players to compete, are they being more of an obstacle than a benefit? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Really interesting to step outside of some of our normal topics of government agencies to different agencies that are kind of taking some of these similar actions and trying to exercise their might where they can. So as always, let me know what you think down below. Drop a like if you found any value here, and let me know what you think about the new topics. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much for spending some time here with me. I do truly appreciate it. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.